Okay, I think we have everyone. If not, they can join us. So thank you for coming tonight. Again, I'm Kerriann Flanagan Brosky, and I'm
Joe Giaquinto.
Quinto, medium and paranormal investigator extraordinaire. And tonight we're going to talk to you about signs and communication from the other side. It's a very spiritual topic, one that's very near and dear to our hearts. Before we get started, many of you, I recognize many of your names. You've been here before. You know about me, but in case this is your first time joining us for the webinar, I would like to give you a little bit of a background about myself. So I am an author, a photographer, a historian, a ghost investigator, and a food writer. So yes, it's a mouthful. My degree is actually in photography, and writing came later. I am the author of 8 books. 6 of them are nonfiction, having to do with ghosts and legends and history and myths and historical crimes. I've written 1 novel called The Medal that has to do with Padre Pio, the saint who bore the stigmata. That's based on a true story. And I have also co-authored an Italian cookbook with Mr. Sausage and Huntington. So I have a very different career, and one that I very much enjoy. And I'm currently working on my 9th book with Joe. Haunted Long Island Mysteries will be out in the fall of 2021. And hopefully we will be back doing in-person events by that time, which will be very exciting for us. I also want to say that my publisher, the History Press, which is a branch of Arcadia Publishing, which is one of the bigger nonfiction publishing companies in the United States, started a new children's children's book section. And they decided to take 8 of their best-selling books from their Haunted America series and adapt them to middle grade fiction. So I was fortunate that mine was one of the better selling books. And I was working with them over this past year, and with the author Rachel Kempster Barry, who put together a book called The Ghostly Tales of Long Island. And what she did is she adapted 16 of my 30 stories from historic haunts of Long Island and wrote it for middle grade fiction. And it's very, very cute. So if you're interested in that, you can get it on Amazon. And I'm also selling them with my other titles, my adult titles, on my website. And I'm personalizing and signing the books and shipping them out to you free of charge. So if you're interested in that, you can check back on my website. So I started working with Joe Giaquinto in 2005, and we've been working together ever since. And we've investigated over 100 places known to be haunted throughout Long Island. The books have taken a very spiritual path, although they're very heavy in, history, local history, especially our Native American past and the American Revolutionary War. As we have gone on, the books have become very spiritual. So that's why we're bringing you this special event today, based on our own experiences and communication that we've had while we are working on these assignments, as well as in our personal lives. So we're going to share that with you tonight. So I'd like to introduce Joe Giaquinto, and he will give you a quick background about himself. So Joe?
I'm a medium, a paranormal investigator. Thank you very much. My day job is a computer geek, and I kind of use both the right and left side of my brain, and I never know which one is the intuitive and the other is the logical side. But 1980, I moved into a haunted house upstate New York and had a very strong poltergeist experience. Because of that, I got interested in this field, and then found out I was very connected to the other side. I was always an intuitive person. 2005, as Kerriann mentioned, I met her at the Conklin Barn in Huntington during one of her lectures, and we immediately had a good connection. And I had paranormal experience, and she was looking for a paranormal expert to assist her with her field investigations for the book. So we joined up, and we've been working now, for all that time. And as what happened is, as we started doing the work, I was developing my abilities as a medium, a psychic medium, and began doing readings, events, public events, private events. And then I found it was a real advantage when we would go out in a field investigation to a haunted house or haunted location. And I would use my mediumship as a tool to see what was there or what kind of energy or who wanted to communicate with us. So we started adding that to our Kerriann's books. And that is what she was saying. She was mentioning that they become more of a spiritual journey. So we started as mostly Ghostbusters, and we transitioned to more of a spiritual type of expedition.
Right. Thank you, Joe. Now, if you tuned into last week's webinar, we talked about the difference between mediumship and psychic abilities. And we went on to explain what a medium was. So when you have spiritual communication, so let's start with that. Obviously, the best form of communicating with your loved ones on the other side would be through mediumship. And that would be sitting in front of a legitimate medium who supplies evidential evidence that they are in fact talking to a lost loved one. But what happens if you don't go to a medium? How do you communicate with your loved ones without the help of a medium if you're just a regular person that doesn't have these gifts? Well, it's very interesting. We live in a very busy world, and there's so many things going around us, and we have the television on, the radio, we have all our computers up. All these things are going on constantly. So it actually takes us away from things that are happening. We don't notice certain things until they're really right in front of our faces. So sometimes our friends and family are communicating with us and we just don't happen to notice. But I'd like to give you an example of this, of an everyday occurrence, because spirits use sense, music, noise, objects, and energy to communicate with us. So an example of this as far as sense, let's say you're standing at a bus stop or a train station, and all of a sudden you smell your grandmother's perfume. Now you look around, there's no flowers around, there's no females standing around, there's only men, okay? And you have this overwhelming smell of your grandmother's perfume, but maybe you just write it off. But more times than not, that is your grandmother's sign that she is trying to communicate with you to let you know that she is still there on your path. So scents really come into this a lot. And Joe's going to go into a little bit more. But perfume is one of the major scents that people have claimed to smell in relation to their own loved ones. So Joe, if you want to talk a little bit more about some of the other scents as well, because there's a lot of ways that people can communicate through scents.
Sure. As you mentioned, a cigarette or cigar. I find when I've done readings, it's been interesting because sometimes we'll have a scent like a cigar, but maybe a particular tobacco, like cherry tobacco or something. And that not only is it that the person that we're doing a reading for was the father was a smoker, maybe a cigar smoker or a pipe smoker, but maybe he used pipe tobacco that was a cherry flavor. So how you can sense a person that is a specific person is by different scents. Another type of sense, and you're talking about sense, but we're talking about sense also, right, is let's say you're driving down the road in your car, and you turn on the radio randomly, just you want to listen to some music while you're driving, and all of a sudden, the song that was your mom or dad's or grandparents' favorite song comes on the radio. This happened to me a couple of years ago. I was in Stop and Shop, and I was thinking of I was channeling someone, a loved one, and I remember one of the songs that was a favorite was Working Girl, the Working Girl theme from the movie. And I went into Stop and Shop, and guess what they were playing on the music, on the background music in the supermarket, the theme from Working Girl. I mean, how odd is that? So these kind of things, these senses, not only scents like perfume and tobacco, but also other senses like hearing and sight and sound and things that seem to happen on cue, like turning on a radio and getting a song that was your father or mother's favorite song. We had speaking, going back to scents, three of us were in Raynham Hall, which is in Oyster Bay. It's a very historic place, Revolutionary War era. And one of the haunting phenomena there was people smelling the fresh baked apple pie in the oven. And we had that happen to us. We were in the foyer, just in the main entrance. We just paid our donation to go in and do the tour. And all of a sudden, the three of us, as if somebody had shoved baked apples up our nostrils. It was so strong and so delicious smelling. We smelled apples for about 3 seconds, and then poof, it went away.
And there were other people that came to Raynham
three of
Hall,
us.
because they had, the guides, I think, had said to you that many people have claimed to smell that. I actually had a woman come up to me at a lecture a couple of years ago saying, I've got to tell you the story. She had lived in a house and she was constantly smelling the smell of garlic and onions and like an Italian sauce being cooked. And she thought she was losing her mind. This is when she wasn't cooking anything. And the rest of her family members were smelling the sauce also. And they couldn't explain why the house always smelled like cooking sauce. And a couple of months went by, and all of a sudden someone came to the door, rang the doorbell, and introduced herself as the daughter of the people that had lived in the house previously. It turns out that the woman came from a big Italian family, and her mother had made sauce every single weekend for years and years when she lived in the house. And the mother also died in the house, a very peaceful death. But for some reason, the scent of the sauce has remained in the house. So it's really amazing because they, like Joe said, there's the cigarette smell, there's perfume, and there's food smells are some of the top scents. But it was remarkable that actually someone came up to me and told me about this. And so then besides scents, Joe, I mean, we also have, like you said, music. And Flickering Lights is another big one. And Joe and I have had a lot of experiences with this, along with misplaced objects and fallen objects, that kind of thing. And I have lost a lot of people in my life and a lot of animals, and I have sensed their presence because of different things that have gone on dealing with any of these things that we're discussing tonight. Joe, why don't you talk a little bit about our experience with Annette Williamson? She's the ghost that haunts the country house. And out of all the places Joe and I have investigated, I would say that the country house is probably one of the most actively haunted houses, haunted restaurant.
Definitely.
And Annette, though, is very, very good at communication.
She's
from the very beginning, right, Joe? When we went
first day we met Bob. Yeah.
Yep.
No, yeah, it was, there have been so many experiences we've had with Annette. Now, she isn't a loved one in the sense of, well, she says, she's telling me she's a loved one. I think at this point she loves us. Otherwise, she would probably kick us out or something, slam the door in our face on the second floor of the country house. But Annette, okay, so Bob is the owner. Now, Bob started working in the kitchen as a busboy or waiter. And he felt very compelled to have to buy the place, to actually become the owner of the country house, which he did. It was a passion that was very spiritual. Now, I've told Bob that Annette, whose name is Williamson, and Bob's name is Williamston, or if I have that backwards, I'm sorry.
Well, she's Annette Williamson, and he's Bob Williamson.
Yes.
Both of Dutch origin.
Exactly. And the names are almost, the last names are. So I always tell Bob that maybe Annette was a loved one, maybe a wife or a sister or his mother, that, you know, she stayed out in the spirit. He came back into the physical plane, and he watches over the house and she watches over it from the spiritual side. So anyway, back to Annette. She's very specific in her events. The way she shows us her love and connects to us and to Bob, who she loves, is she flashes lights. Think of, you know, when you see an oncoming thunderstorm and you always see the flash of lightning out in the distance and the whole sky lights up. I'm not talking about the lightning bolts, but just the whole sky kind of lights up, like behind the clouds. Well, that's her method. That's her, you know, her modus operandi. So the first time we went to interview Bob, you came in, I sat down, we sat down, Bob was in front of us. I was looking beyond him in the next room, the whole room lit up with light. Like somebody had an old time flash unit, one of those flash bulbs that would, you flash it and then you throw the bulb out. And I said, Bob, the whole room just lit up and bathed in light. He says, oh, that's Annette saying hello, you know. Now, we did a pilot movie on ghosts, and including the country house, and we concluded the last shot, the camera shot was done in Kerriann's dining room at her house. And when we started talking about wrapping up, you know, the conversation, talking about Annette and how she communicates, lets people know she's there, the cameraman saw behind us in Kerriann's living room through the doorway, the open doorway, the whole room lit up. And so when, you know, Annette had followed Kerriann to her house. And we talked about that a little bit. And then I said, well, you know, she's interested in the movie we're making about her life. So why wouldn't she follow us around to see how the movie ends, right? So yeah, and that's really great. And there's other things she's done. She's appeared to people. She's moved things around. She's taken things and hid them. She's very playful. Kids that have been there with the, you know, for dinner with their parents, they've seen her. I think there was a story, right, Kerriann, somebody saw somebody in the bathroom.
Yeah, that was a child. A lot of children have seen her.
Yeah.
And employees have seen her as well. But what was interesting, the first time that Joe and I went there, we were taking photographs inside and outside, and we were getting a lot of orbs, both with my camera and with Joe's. And you could just almost feel the electricity in the area.
It was incredible.
And this is like one of our earlier stories when we first started working together. And I came home that night, and all of a sudden, I went to open the back door where I come in because I have a longer driveway, and the light bulb blew. So I didn't think anything of it. I came in the house and I went to put something out for the mail for the next day in my entrance foyer. And when I went there, the light bulb blew out. And I had said to my husband, you know, this is crazy. There's 2 light bulbs that blew out. And then finally I went into yet another room and the light bulb blew out again.
That was definitely her.
Yeah. So that was whether I had
been your father too.
Right. Whether I had energy, whether it was a net or whatever it was, but it was causing this type of phenomenon. And as Joe mentioned, when we were working on this documentary film, you know, the filmmakers, I don't know if they believed what we were doing or anything like that, but when we had the light flashes, they were in shock because they captured it on film, and it is in the documentary, our 22-minute documentary that we did on the country house. So that was very interesting. There have been other times when I've been at country house without Joe, not working, that I've been there with my husband having dinner. And I've literally like turned my head because I'm like, who's taking a photograph of me? And everyone is just eating and minding their own business. So the light flashes, again, are another sign. So we have music, we have scents, we have light flashes. Then of course,
and we have creatures.
Hmm?
We have creatures.
Creatures. What kind of creatures?
Butterflies and things.
Oh yeah, well, we'll be getting into that in a minute. Yes, we're gonna, because everyone wants to know about butterflies. Okay. But before that, well, let me see here what I want to tell you about. The other thing that we get, which we spoke about a lot, I guess 2 webinars ago, are getting orbs and EVPs, which are electronic voice phenomenon. So that's another sign, but it's not necessarily one, you know, most of you don't get EVPs, I'm sure, unless you're recording and looking for these things. But a lot of you can get orb images on your camera. And what I tell people is, you know, take pictures and then look in the background. I mean, my degree is in photography. I'm trained to put together a decent photo within a frame. And so I look at what's in the background or what's over someone's head. And so a lot of people, especially if you're using just a regular old, like a Coolpix camera, some people are even getting them on their cell phones. So you can get orb pictures, and some of them could be your own loved ones and friends that just want to make their presence known. But as in fact, to give you an example of this was many years ago. I mean, I have 2 teenage children now, almost adults. But when my older son was doing, I guess it was a stepping up ceremony to kindergarten, and he was in the basement of a church with his pre-K class, and they were on the stage and everyone was going to be singing, and my mother-in-law happened to be in, my in-law is from Florida at the time, and they were sitting with us, and she started taking pictures of the kids singing on the stage. Next thing you know, she shows me the camera. She says, "Oh my God, I think I got those orbs that you were talking about." And I looked, and above all of the children's heads were these magnificent orbs.
I think I saw you showed me that picture, right?
Yeah.
That's a great picture.
And she said, "Why are there so many?" And I said, "Well, you're fortunate that you're still here to see your grandson." I said, "But there are a lot of grandparents that have moved on to the other side."
That's right.
And they're making themselves known that they are there, in fact, with their grandkids. So you don't have to be me, a professional photographer, to get orbs. People send me their orb pictures all the time. So that's another means. And then, of course, with what Joe and I do professionally, we get EVPs, the electronic voice phenomenon spirit communication, which we discussed 2 weeks ago. But there are some other things as far as signs, because again, this webinar is about signs and communication. So we're talking a little bit about communication. Talk about signs, because people ask me all the time about butterflies and cardinals. So Joe, why don't you start off telling about butterflies, and then I'll speak about cardinals.
Well, of course, butterflies are amazing creatures. All the creatures in this wonderful universe are just amazing. And spirits they are spiritually connected, and spirits sometimes use them to give us signs. I have a story I've never shared with you, Kerriann. This is probably 1981 or so. I was working in the city in a building on the west side of Manhattan. I think we were on the 11th or 12th floor. Anyway, there was a lady there named Valerie. And we were, back then, I just started doing the ghost investigation. So we were going out in the field. I had a couple of people in my team that we would go out. And this lady, Valerie, said, "I want to share a story with you." And I said, "Okay." And she says that she had a friend who passed. And she said that when she passed, she said she would come back as a butterfly. Butterflies are amazing because it's a metamorphosis with them. They start as, a creature that's like, I guess, a caterpillar, or, and then it goes into like a pupa stage or something.
The chrysalis.
The chrysalis, and then it emerges with the wings.
So
and
it's like a rebirth.
It's like a rebirth, like reincarnation. And so she was into butterflies, and she said that her friend said that, I don't know if a friend died of cancer or something, but she said that she would come back as a butterfly. So she was up on this building, some office building in Manhattan, like 30 stories up or something. And she saw a monarch butterfly outside the window, and that was her friend.
Yeah,
and
that's a great story.
And there's a lot of stories. You hear a lot of stories like that. And I know you're going to talk about the Cardinals.
Right. And but going back to the butterflies for a moment, I've had butterflies at the beach, at Robert Moses Beach. During times that I've had challenging things going on, and I'd be sitting there alone, it would be off season, and all of a sudden a butterfly is flying in front of my face, which is very odd for it to be by the ocean like that, on the sand. So a lot of people say that, and in fact, there are countries that actually believe that the butterfly is your departed relative.
Yes.
Like Greece, Mexico, Ireland. There are a number of countries that believe wholeheartedly that the butterfly is your departed loved one coming back.
I want to, before you go on to Cardinals, I just want to mention to the group, I have an orb. I don't have it to show you tonight. Maybe we'll show it in the future, but we were at a private home in Calverton, and there's a spirit there of a girl that passed, and her name is Elizabeth. And I was sitting doing this group reading, maybe about 6 or 7 people in this room, in the dining room. I was at the head of the table, and to my left, I suddenly felt that the girl was there, the spirit of the girl. And I said, I became like a scolding father. I don't know why. Maybe she was misbehaving or something. I sensed like I had to tell her, like, don't disrupt the reading. Don't cause any phenomena. So I said to her, no, you have to listen. You can't say anything now, this kind of thing. It's kind of, conversation with her. All of a sudden, one of my members who had a camera on was panning the room. She saw an orb leave my arm right from where I felt the spirit, and it was fluttering like a little butterfly.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's a butterfly orb. And the whole idea
ones
was
that look like butterflies at Fiorello Dolce Bakery in Huntington.
that's right. Yes.
On
And I
Gerard's
think
video.
also in what's the name of the private home we did upstairs in the bedrooms at the apartment upstairs. You know what I'm talking about, Nadia.
Oh, right.
We had a lot of orbs there that were similar to that. So I think, again, even when it wasn't a butterfly, I think it was meant to be a very feminine, very beautiful, blossoming thing, this emergence from the chrysalis of this beautiful.
Because that's the thing.
creature.
It's also symbolic of the soul's freedom moving on to heaven or the next realm, whatever you believe. And cardinals are very similar. Obviously, we know that cardinals are beautiful red birds. And many people believe that they are the souls of people that have passed, or that they are there to give us reassurance. My grandmother was on my father's side, was a firm believer of the presence of cardinals as being lost loved ones. And a red cardinal appeared to her constantly after her husband, my grandfather, had passed away. So it's especially symbolic in Christian religions. The cardinal symbolizes faith and the blood of Christ. And if a cardinal appears in your window, sometimes it would be telling you basically then to keep the faith and to remind you of Christ's presence in your life. That's why so many cardinals are seen on Christmas cards too. I don't know if you know that.
You know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, but I know with my own experience, when I've been going through very challenging times, a cardinal will appear in front of me, almost looking into my kitchen window and just sitting there, looking in. And it is very unusual. So you can take things like the cardinal and the butterfly as symbolic, meanings that we have communication in that way as well.
However, one caveat to that is people always say, well, how do you know we're just not imagining it. We want this to happen, like looking at the cloud in the sky and saying it looks like a face or a Mickey Mouse or something, if people would say that. It has to be on cue, and it's a personal experience. It has to have some sort of meaning.
Exactly, right.
So if you know that for you, the cardinal is a very powerful totem, or you have a loved one that was represented, or you're in a feeling where that cardinal represents the right feeling, and then it happens.
Right.
And maybe it happens multiple times. Right. I've had cardinal experiences too, Kerriann. I remember one, I was in Cape Cod staying at a friend's townhouse and visiting with the family, and I had a cardinal come up to the second story window and just kind of perch there and look in like, hi.
Right, and that's what it seems to be. The times that I've
and they're not very tame birds. They're very skittish.
And they stay. So it's one thing, like Joe was saying, if you drive up someone's house and you see birds, and there's 5 different types of birds, and one of them are cardinal, and they're all eating the food. It's not the same. So as something that there's no birds in sight, and you're crying about something that's upsetting you, and all of a sudden
the cardinal
see a cardinal outside your window, and it's looking into your window. So that's what Joe's trying to say. So it's how it's interpreted also. But we've had a lot of communication during our our book assignments, our investigations, and some of them I'd like to discuss, Joe, if you want to talk about a little bit, from our original Ghosts of Long Island books, where, most of the stories in the books are historical in nature, again, with the hopes of preserving local history. But we do throw in, even for this new one that's coming out next year, we do throw in a couple of personal ones just to show people that communication is not just with someone who lived in the 17 or the 1800s. Communication is all around us.
Although we do have some friends on the other side that are from those time periods, like William Sidney
we
Mount.
do, exactly. But we also have
Robert
people
Townsend.
that are more from our time period, that were alive during our period. So Joe, do you want to tell them a little bit about our
Sure.
experience? Because especially you had this experience as soon as we entered this house. This was an assignment we had where we were visiting a husband and
The
wife
Lee
with
hives.
a son. And
Yes.
I did
Okay.
not
Oh,
tell Joe any information before
yeah.
we
This
got
is
there.
really a great
So
story.
Joe,
This
go
is,
ahead, tell that,
you know,
tell that story.
this is amazing. And, I started doing the mediumship. So I've been developing my ability, practicing, this was just out of the blue. And it was a beautiful story. So Michael was the son, and he had died. He had diabetes, right,
Yeah,
Kerriann? Yeah, he died.
amongst some other things, I think.
Some other things. Well, his parents were very heartbroken over his death, but Michael was a very persistent spirit, and he haunted the house that his parents lived in. And the husband and wife were very intuitive. John had his own experiences at Deep Wells Mansion,
Right, yes.
St. Right? So we got there. I was actually following your SUV. I didn't even know where this house was. We arrived at this house, and we were going to do an interview in the kitchen. And the husband and wife were setting up with Kerriann's, putting the coffee and cake out and everything, getting ready for the interview. Kerriann was getting the recorder ready. So I had been traveling for a while, so I said I need to make a quick pit stop. So I went down the hall to the bathroom, and as soon as I closed the door, I heard very clear, very loud, like someone blasting in your ear, mine in a very melodic voice, sort of like a Hawaiian type of relaxing voice, like someone that'd be sitting there playing the ukulele, and he said, "My name is Michael," just like that. Now, I didn't know these people. I didn't know their first names. And so I finished my business. I walked into the kitchen, and I said, "Listen, before we start, who's Michael?" And they kind of looked stone-faced a bit, and they were surprised. And I said, "Well, that's our son who died."
And it was an amazing story because
it was really
this
incredible.
was a couple that had experiences, and they did individually, they had experiences. So the wife would have things happen in the house, communication, and the husband would have it. But for over a year, they never told each other because they thought that if they did, that their spouse would think that they were losing their mind.
Yeah.
They couldn't take the grief. So once they found out, because this son was very good at communicating, I mean, all kinds of things
very good
were going on. And once they came together, they started crying and realized that it was their son communicating with them. And there were a bunch of things. There was a stuffed animal.
Yeah, let me talk about the monkey, the organ grinder monkey. So Michael had a mascot. It was one of those, battery operated monkeys that claps the cymbal. You've seen those. So he had it in his, they had a cleaning business. So they had it like a panel truck. So they had it on the dashboard. Now, one thing with the monkey is that a couple weeks after Michael had passed, the little monkey started banging the cymbals, even though the batteries were dead. Or maybe it was a month or so after. But basically, it shouldn't have done anything, but it did. So John gave me the monkey, the mascot. He just wanted it out of the house. I guess he was trying to separate from Michael. It was time to move on. And I remember John going like this. He says, "Joe, I'm going to give you the monkey. You could do whatever you want with it. I don't care what you do with it. Just take it." So I took it. One of the phenomena they had at the house was that after Michael died, he had a Hawaiian orchid plant that never bloomed. And for a couple weeks after, it bloomed one big white flower. It was like a butterfly. It was like a beautiful sign. The energy went into the plant and it just bloomed. I sent the monkey to a colleague on the West Coast. And sometime after, I got a call from her, and she said, "Thank you for the monkey. It's very interesting." She says, "But I have to ask you a question, Joe." I said, "What is it?" She says, "Well, ever since I got the monkey, I have a Hawaiian orchid plant that never blooms, and it's blooming like crazy." Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So that's talk about signs.
That was an amazing story. There was another one, I think for Ghosts of Long Island 2, where you and I had gone to meet that woman, Diane, and we were talking about.
You want to talk about that?
She had lived in a house that had a lot of things happening, but it was sort of two sides to the story. She talked about what went on in the house, But then she talked about her dad. Now, her dad was going for a routine surgery, and unfortunately, the doctor that he had wasn't very good, and her father passed away. He died during the surgery. And of course, Diane was devastated. And but shortly thereafter, her father was trying to communicate with her because he wanted her to know that the doctor had screwed up, basically. And his primary form of communication, we had mentioned about the flickering lights, he actually had been able to manipulate street lights. So she would drive underneath the street lamps and they would go on and off. And she thought that she was losing her mind. And she said to her husband, watch this, and they drove in, and sure enough, it happened. And she was with friends, and it happened when she was in the car with them as well. So she really believed that was a sign. It wasn't until her mother had passed away that the communication stopped, because it was like he was almost
They were both together,
right? And the communication had stopped. But that was a very, very powerful story. And then, unrelated to what we do together, Joe has had some experiences as well. One of them is at the Orient Church with Amanda Malloy, and maybe you could explain.
Yeah, sure.
You probably remember who this
was. That was an amazing event. So what happened was, we were at the Orient Church in Orient, near Orient Point, where the ferry is, and we were doing a ghost investigation. And my group was upstairs in the church auditorium part, where the pews and the altar are. That night, actually, there was a fellow named Caesar who was trying to take a picture in the corner of where the choir and the organ players singers would be. He took a picture of the wall. I was behind him and took a picture of Caesar taking a picture of the wall where he was an orb guy. He loved to get orbs. I got a picture of Caesar holding the camera like this, looking up at the ceiling, and right in front of him is an orb. Talk about signs. The spirits put it there just for our benefit. But anyway, so while everybody was having fun, we had this Mike and Christina. They had brought their son, their 12-year-old son, Anthony. And we were down in the dining room down below where they had the bingo parlor and everything. So Anthony said, this is a lot of fun, everything. And my group was having fun upstairs. And so I let them do what they want up there. And I was down there with the family. And Anthony says, could you talk to my karate teacher who died? And I said, well, I could try. So I started doing a reading informally, and I had my EVP recorder on, and Amanda Malloy started coming through. It was really...
And Joe, just to interrupt you for 1 minute. This happened, it was a hit and run accident that happened in Huntington Village.
It was there was a kid that was under the influence. I think he was taking drugs or something, and she was jogging with a friend, and I think the friend survived.
It was a big news story.
It was a big news story,
about, 10, 15 years ago. I don't even know how long.
Yeah, and I don't know. I didn't know anything about it, but I started getting things, and some of the signs I got from her were, I started describing her physical appearance. I told them what kind of belt she had. I said that she was buried with her belt in the casket. She started coming through with EVPs. So while we were talking and Anthony would ask me a question, I would say, yes, I think Amanda says yes to your question, Anthony. And a second later on the EVP recorder, when I played it back later, you'd hear her say yeah or yes or okay. There were some amazing parts, like Anthony, they were really grilling me, Kerriann. They said, okay, if you think you're really talking to Amanda, what's her favorite baseball team? Well, I saw a big red B, and I said Boston Red Sox, and that was it. And there were things like that. They asked me what the students gave her as a gift, and I was telling them that question. But the best part was Anthony was getting into fights. A kid, he's at school, the bullies, and, he's picking fights sometimes with you. And he had the karate, he was getting the skills from his karate teacher, Amanda. So I said, are you getting in a lot of fights, Anthony? And he says, and his parents said, yeah, more than he should. I said, Amanda has a message for you, a very loving message. And then an EVP came over that said, it's cool to be something first, like to not be physical, and And I said that I went into this trance and I started giving this verbatim from her, like I did with William Sidney Mount that time, Kerriann. And it was just great. It was a beautiful message. So Amanda came through. There was another story, if I could share, the Licorice Story.
Oh yes, that's a good one.
Okay. This, by the way, this goes back to the flashing lights and stuff that we talked about. So Therese, okay, Jeannie is a friend of mine, and she had lost her mom in September a few years ago. I said, Jeannie, why don't you come out, and come to my event? We're doing a sort of a walk around. We're at a nursing home, which is an active nursing home, and they wanted us to investigate it for ghosts. So here we have the men in black, right? We had our briefcases, our cameras, and we're walking through the nursing home. People saying, "Who are these people?"
And this was with your group, right?
This is my group, yeah. We were supposed to be discreet, but people were living there. They were like, "Who are these people coming through?" They look like like they look like the bodyguards for Trump or something, Okay. Anyway, we were outside in the parking lot and getting ready to go, and I was giving the group a little kind of, give some ground rules, like, don't talk to people in the rooms, don't make noise, be discreet, everything. Well, Jeannie was right next to me. And Jeannie's mom had given her a code word. And she said, and I didn't know about this originally, she said, if Joe gets the secret word, you'll know I made it to the other side. So I went to the St. James General Store earlier in the day, and I bought all this penny candy, saltwater taffy, lollipops, all this stuff. So one thing I love is licorice, but I didn't buy any for some reason. It was the only thing that wasn't in a bag of candy. I was going to bring the candy and give it to the group, so they can have something to munch on. So Jeannie's next to me, and I said, everybody, I've got candy. I got goodies for you. And I looked in the bag to tell them what was in the bag, and my mind went blank. Couldn't think of anything. The only thing I could think of was licorice, which wasn't in the bag. And I turned to Jeannie. She says, what? I said, is that the secret word, licorice? Is that what? And she says, yes, it is. And all of a sudden, all the lights in the parking lot started winking on and off. All the, the surveillance lights, the carport lights. And I said, she's here and she's winking to let you know she's okay. And it was just beautiful. And there was a lot of significance to me saying winking, because when Jeannie's mom was in hospice and she was on heavy meds, they were induced sort of a coma, a sleep coma. She would wink at Jeannie to let her know that she was still cognizant of what they were saying to her, that she was alert, even though she couldn't talk. So the Licorice Story was really great.
Yeah, I love that story. I wish I could sit in there to see that.
And I want to tell you one other thing. There's a movie by Abbott and Costello. It's called Time of Their Lives. It's one of the few movies where where Costello plays a straight guy. They play a couple of Revolutionary War ghosts, two Revolutionary War patriots that accidentally get killed because they thought that they were spies for the British when they're actually carrying a message from George Washington. It's a great movie, and Costello gets to really give Bud Abbott a hard time in the movie. It's a role reversal. Anyway, in the beginning of the movie, when you see them as ghosts, and then later they move up to the modern time, which when this movie was made was like 1946 or something, so it's the modern time. But anyway, when they do the segue, they put a date up on the screen, and the date was September 19th, I think. I think that was the date. That's the day that Jeannie's mom died. So when we played the movie for the group that night, later on, and everybody watched the movie, the date came up. That was
Wow.
Jeannie's. That was another sign. Yeah. So just wanted to throw that out.
So really what it comes down to is that you really have to pay attention to things.
You have to pay attention.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have some stories I want to share as well. But you also have had communication with your dad is gone now.
Yes.
About 6 years or so?
So I think it's been like 2012, almost 9 years now. It's incredible. But yeah, just quick on Dad. We were doing a radio show actually, and George Lugo, the medium from Florida, he actually did a reading, and he asked me if he could do a reading for me, and he was very accurate. When we went off air, he continued the reading. But when Dad started coming through big time, one thing Dad used to do was he used to say, At Ease, At Ease. Now that's from a movie with William Holden, Stalag 17, which was the inspiration for the comedy Hogan's Heroes. These were about prisoners in a German prison war camp. They were trying to escape. So there was a guy who was like the radar character in the show MASH that would read the mail for everybody. So we'd go like, okay, Moriarty, here's your mail, at ease, because everybody was in a rush to get their mail. And so when Dad would always run out to the mailbox to get the mail before Mom and I got it. And then we'd have to sit at the table while Dad went through every letter. Junk mail from some guy in Kansas City. What do they want? More money? You know, and he would go, and I'm like, come on, Dad, come on. You know, so he would go at ease, because Dad was a World War II Battle of the Bulge vet. So anyway, one day about 4 o'clock, which is when the mail usually arrived, I was in my office in our home in out east, and it was quiet as a church. And Mom was all the way on the other side of the house on her computer in the porch. And all of a sudden, I heard Dad's voice, loud as can be, in the hall, saying, at ease, at ease. Wow. And I said, we've also seen him. We used to pull up with the car. We gave him a flagpole. He used to raise the flag every day. We had a flagpole in the front yard. And every time I would look out of the corner of my eye, I would see the flag. Even though it wasn't flying, I would see it flying on the pole. So there were a lot of signs.
Yeah, I know. You have to look for them and just be open to them. For me, as far as what I do with Joe, one of the biggest areas of communication that I've had with someone from the other side professionally, as I mentioned in past webinars, has been the genre painter, Long Island genre painter, William Sidney Mount, who lived during the 1800s. He has come to me in my office. I have felt his presence through clairsentience, which is being able to feel the presence of someone from the other side, as well as clairaudience, which I have been able to hear. But Joe and I were there about 1.5 years ago. We had access to William Sidney Mount's house in Stony Brook, and
beautiful
house, ongoing
too.
thing. It's that I'm constantly writing about William Sidney Mount, his house and his life, because there are so many things that continually happen. And Joe and I had met the caretaker. Actually, no, it wasn't the caretaker. The caretakers who lived there were not home, and we had a maintenance person come out to the house. And he basically gave us carte blanche. He said, here's my cell phone, call me when you're done. So Joe and I were like two kids in a candy shop. Look at us in this house, and we can investigate and open everything.
So much fun.
It was really good. So, and this is after I've had a lot of communication on my own with William Sidney Mount. So we're standing in a living room, and they had been working on this house, doing renovations for some time. So Joe was standing, I don't know, we were in the same room. It was the bigger room of the house. And he was about 15 feet away, and he was taking a picture. And I was just sort of standing there looking around like this, holding my camera. And about 5 feet behind me, like a 2x4 just crashed to the ground so loud. I mean, I wasn't walking, so it wasn't any kind of vibration that would have made it fall. Joe was nowhere near there. And it was within 10 minutes of us being there alone in the house. And I knew right away that he was like, okay, I'm here. I'm going to go around with you. And we had gotten a lot of phenomenon. We got orbs. We got a lot of EVPs.
Ghost box was excellent. Yeah.
And that, you know, if you join us next year, when we talk about this new book, we're going to play a lot of new material with William Sidney.
Can I just chime in too on the experience? So we did the ghost box with him. In one of the questions, he actually threw this out to us. Let me back up a second. So after we investigated the house, I think it was the first time, my sister, who collects a lot of art and antiques of my brother-in-law, she called me up. She's all excited. And she says, we got a painting, an authentic oil painting done by a famous artist's brother. And I say, who? I'm thinking Picasso, you know, someone. He says, William Sidney Mount's brother, Shepherd Alonzo Mount.
Yeah.
And I mean, how odd is that?
Yeah.
So in the ghost box, when we got to go in the house and we were up in the attic and we saw the beautiful palettes where he actually painted different shades of color, his own little palette brush there on the shelves where he used to paint up there. But we're doing the ghost box, and he actually says, Winston Mount says, I said, you know, my sister has a painting done by your brother. And he says, yes, I know.
Yes.
I played that for my sister. She fell off the chair when she heard that
Exactly.
one.
So he's a very good communicator.
He is.
And if
really
you listen
is.
to our past webinars, we won't go into all of it now, but we also had that swinging door, the porch door that was hovering.
How about the hawks? Talk about birds.
Yeah,
How about the two
hawks are another one. We talked about cardinals and butterflies, but hawks also are a presence. And Joe and I had the opportunity of sitting with a Settlecott Indian chief, Chief Gail Rivas, many years ago, and
the mysterious Gail Rivas.
It was very mysterious, yeah. And she was in her complete Indian dress and garb.
So great.
And there were hawks that just kept screeching out. And she said those hawks were for us. So they also show strength. They show that the spirit world is with you and following you. So hawks,
the spirits are with us, yeah.
For another good sign. So we've experienced a lot of these things during our investigations. But like Joe said about his own personal experiences, I have had personal experiences as well. I was very close with my father, and he died back in 2005 at the age right before his 63rd birthday. He had multiple sclerosis for 16 years. He was diagnosed at age 48. And it was a very difficult time for me after he had passed. And there was one day in particular that I was out and I was feeling very upset about things. And I always leave music playing in my house because I have dogs, or I just want people to know that there's someone in the house. And my stereo is behind a pine armoire. So there's no way for the dog, or, you know, I had small kids at the time. They were in school. In fact, I think I was crate training my dog, so she was in the crate. There was no way that anyone could have messed with the stereo system. And I remember pulling into my driveway in the back. And when I got out of the car, I'm like, it was in the middle of the day, like on a weekday. And I hear this loud country music playing. And I'm saying, who's blaring music in the middle of the day? It wasn't like it was a Saturday night or something like that. As I got to my back door, I heard that it was coming from my house. And I went in, and it was at the highest decibel possible, and no one had been in the house. I knew that it was my father trying to say, I'm here, you know, don't worry. So he communicated, he did a whole bunch of things, but a lot of it was with music, with his communication. There was another time my husband and I had a major decision to make about something. And we were really wishing that my father was around so we could ask his advice. He was very good about giving advice and being there for us. And it was very hard not having him there. And so we were thinking about this decision, thinking about not knowing what to do. And that night we went to bed. Now, remember the original, before iPhones, there was the iPod. Well, I had this iPod, and it was called an iPod station, I guess, that you put it in. And all of a sudden at 2:00 in the morning, the iPod went off, and it was blaring a song by Enrique Iglesias, believe it or not, someone that I had not listened to in 2 years. And when I listened to the words of the song, it matched what my father, like there was advice in there that my father was giving. There was another song from It Happened Again, the soundtrack to the animated film Cars, where I forget the name of the song now. It was from the 1950s, and it's if I could take you back to heaven. And I forget the words now, but there was another night that song came on around 1:00 in the morning for no apparent reason. And Life is But a Dream. Okay, my husband told me now. Okay, life is but a dream. And if you listen to the words of that song, it's all about that, you know, the person is still with you. So it was really, really remarkable to get those signs from my father. And again, that was something that happened, you know, on my own without having a medium. The other thing, when I had small children, and maybe some of you have experienced this, when you have infants, they're just, they're adorable, but they're sort of there. They don't communicate like a 1-year-old child would, let's say. But I had both of my children at times, they would be swinging in the swing that I had set up for them in the living room. And all of a sudden they'd start like laughing and giggling and smiling, and that people would take notice. Like my mother or my mother-in-law would say, "What's in that corner?" And this happened so often with them. So I knew that they were communicating with someone that was here, probably maybe my grandmother who had passed away. The same thing with my animals. I've had a lot of experiences with my pets, and I had a golden retriever. My office is on the 3rd floor of my house. I live in an older colonial, so I have an eyebrow window, and the golden retriever was always in that eyebrow window when I worked looking out. When she passed away, 3 months later, we got a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. And once she was potty trained, I would bring her up to my office. And as soon as she came up, her hair stood on end, and she was backing up and growling, looking into the area of the eyebrow window. She did the same thing in my living room in front of my fireplace, which was another spot where my golden retriever would sleep all the time. So it's really interesting to see that, if you observed your pets and you observe your children, you will also get signs that someone is there with you. Because again, our family members, they don't leave, and they want us to know that they are there with us on their life's journey, no matter what we're going through. So it's very comforting. Now, we're going to get to questions in a minute because we're almost out of time. I actually had a question emailed to me last week. So I just want to make mention of that. But Joe, I know that you want to say something as a little wrap up before we get to that.
Yeah. So the couple key things to take away from this today is, first, as Kerriann has said, you have to be tuned into it. Now, it doesn't mean you have to, turn everything off, turn the radio off, turn off the computer, sit in a room with the lights off and just meditate for 5 hours. Just the key thing is, if you want to talk to someone, a loved one, let them know and tell them, because this is something we do when we do readings, is we set the communication model. We don't wait for the spirits to set it.
And with investigations, we do this as well.
We do this too, because we don't know what the spirits are doing. They're invisible. They're on the other side. They have no physical body. So we tell them what we expect, and they always come through. They always come through exactly how we expect them to come through. So if you want to talk to, let's say, your father who passed, figure out what, as Kerriann said, figure out what type of signs are valid for your father. Was he a cigarette smoker? Did he have a favorite song? Some people will see a license plate. They'll be driving behind a car.
Yes, I've had a lot of people.
Like, let's say the father's name was Charlie, and then all of a sudden the guy will pull right in front of them, and it says Charlie when they're thinking about the father. So step 1, be open. Step 2, let the spirits know who you want to talk to. And step 3, wait for the sign and look for the sign. And don't get distracted by the sign. Just be aware of it. I use, just as a quick example, I'll wrap up with this. We were talking about lights flashing. I use what I call the 2 beeps. 2 of anything is a yes and 1 is no. So when we do a question and answer seance with the spirits, I'll say, okay, spirits, flash the lights twice, or knock on the wall twice, or give us some sort of, that you're hearing us. And so whatever works for you. If you like butterflies, use butterflies. If you like sounds, if you like light flashes, if you just think of, you want to see, clear your mind.
What, you just said that, a light flash in front of you. Yep.
That's probably Melissa, my spirit.
And sometimes people find pennies too. They take that as
pennies. Yeah. I had one lady said she was always finding pennies. Now she's finding dimes. I said, well, you're bumping up. You're probably going to get a raise or something at work or something. But anyway, so tune in. There's a lot to learn. There are workshops for learning how to tune in. I do workshops occasionally on that. And the key thing is just to be open. But don't think that, there's UFOs landing on every rooftop. You've got to have a balance.
Right. Exactly.
Everything you see is not necessarily a sign. It has to be significant. It has to be on cue, and maybe even duplicatable, which means, it's always the same sign at the same time in the same place.
Right.
Then it's real.
Exactly. Okay. And we have a couple of questions coming through, which I'll take in a minute. I do want to bring this up because I actually had someone who had emailed me last week saying, could you bring this up on the webinar for this week? So I think it is an important question because people have asked me this before, and they say, my father passed away and I was so close to him. Why is he not communicating with me? I know how devastating that must be for people. There are certain people in my life who have not communicated.
Same here.
And I actually learned a lot about this through a spirit guide from another friend of mine who's a medium. And I work with his spirit guide as well. And how he had explained it is, it depends on the person. Okay. So if a person didn't believe in this sort of communication when they lived on the earth, sometimes they will be uncomfortable with doing it. That's number one. So for instance, my grandmother on my father's side was very strict Catholic. Okay. While she lived on the earth, she wouldn't have believed probably in mediumship. There have been times that she has come through in readings that I've had, but not often. And when she comes through, she says, I'm coming through, but I am uncomfortable with this process. So that's one thing. So sometimes they just don't want to communicate because they don't understand it and it wasn't something they believed. Other times, they're new to it. They have to, it's a process. I mean, when you sit with a medium, it's your energy, the medium's energy, and the spirit's energy. And the communication has to be very good. You have to be, that's why they say, like, don't drink alcohol before a reading, don't get into a car accident and or get into a fight with somebody, because that energy comes into it and it could prohibit communication. So if you come frazzled to a reading and say, well, why is no one coming through?
Yeah, can I just
and then I want to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah. And there's some other possibilities. One is that you might want a visual sign and the person is more of an audio person. So you have to make sure you're on the same track. So if you're looking for an orb, but the guy's knocking on the wall, you're not going to hear it. You're not going to notice it. Some people block.
Yeah.
Blocking is where you have a fear of opening up, and if you watch Hollywood, every time somebody passes to the other side, they become a zombie or something.
Right.
But a fear will block, and I've had this a lot, Kerriann, where people say, how come my mother isn't coming through? And I said, well, she's not coming through because she doesn't want you to get sad and cry and go through the grieving all over again. Right.
Yeah. Sometimes that's it. If they think that you're so, I don't know if anyone's having this. So Joe's freezing up a bit on our screen here. Let's hope we bring him back.
We did this on the radio show. Remember, I went to the other side of the veil.
But to expand on that point a little bit.
All right, just continue on, Kerriann.
Yeah. So if they're not,
just continue on, and I'll join you in a minute.
Okay. Yeah. If they're not comfortable, like Joe said, or they don't want to do this type of communication, they want to do a different type of communication. The other thing, keep in mind, if you lost your mother 3 months ago, okay, and you're desperately looking for a sign, you have to sort of think of it, their time and our time are two different things. So we think of it, oh my gosh, it's been 3 months. But your mother, there is no time,
right.
Doesn't realize, well, 3 months has passed. So it's almost like,
that's right,
like a jet lag, okay? Like when you get off of a plane after traveling, if you're going to a foreign country and you have jet lag, the last thing you feel like doing is communicating with certain people. So they could be in that jet lag sort of area and not thinking that it's been 3 months because there is no time. So it takes people who have recently died, it takes work like anything else. From their side, they have to learn how to communicate, either if it's through a medium or how they could make physical things occur, such as the lights flickering, that kind of thing. And it takes energy and it takes work to learn it. So don't give up on it if you haven't experienced these things.
Right. I want to throw two really quick ones out. Didn't finish on that. One is if you're working with a medium, sometimes certain spirits just don't like the medium.
Yeah.
So they don't come through for that person.
Like
but the other one is, and this kind of sounds dumb and silly and very obvious, but I have to say it. Sometimes they just don't have anything to say. You know, when somebody passes, like with Michael's parents were like, you know, Michael's been haunting us for years. You know, Michael, move on. We want to move on. You're on the other side. You went to the spirit world. You went to heaven. It's time for you to move on. Stop.
Yeah, because I've actually spoken to people who have had experience. There was a woman that contacted me one time, and she was doing laundry, and she felt her mother standing behind her, and she was so frightened because she didn't know about any of this. She didn't know that it was a positive thing. She got very afraid, and it happened on numerous occasions. And she contacted me and said, "What do I do?" And I said, well, it's nice that your mother is communicating, but if you're not at that level, if you're not ready for that communication, then you need to tell her, I appreciate it. I know that you came, but it's more than I can handle. And please just stay where you are. And I said, I know it might sound crazy for you to speak out loud. You feel like you're talking to no one, but she did this and she didn't have the experience again. So there's all kinds of things that go on. I do want to get to some questions, Joe. I think we have 4 of them. So. Okay, we have someone asking, what is a ghost box? Joe, if you want to go over this briefly.
Sure.
We had talked about this in, I guess, our first webinar that we did at the beginning of the month. So
that's one type. This is one of the ancient ones. This is one of my favorites. The ghost box was invented by a guy named Frank Sumption. He took a Radio Shack radio, and he found if you could cut the wires in the back, you know, the scanner where it goes from station to station, and when you find a station you like, you pause it. Well, he found if you cut certain wires on the ribbon, the scanner would just keep scanning. It would stop and go, stop and go. Well, the spirits can monkey around with that scanner, and when you ask them a question, they will stop the scanning of the radio at somebody talking on the air with the answer that you want. For example, let's say you have a guy announcer saying, and the weather today is going to be beautiful. And you say, spirits, what's it like in heaven? I actually had this exact question answer. And the spirit said, beautiful. So it just stopped it right when the weatherman said it's going to be beautiful. And you can have a real-time conversation. So unlike an EVP recorder where you record on a tape recorder and then you play it back later, the ghost box is actually live spirit communication. It's a lot of fun.
And we do a lot of presentations just on that. If you want to hear more about that, I'm going to go over our list of what we have coming up next week. But you could also go onto my website at KerriannFlanaganBrosky.com, where you could hear EVPs and white noise EVPs and EVPs from the ghost box. So I hope that answers the question. We have 2 more in here.
Great question.
How do you know if you are hearing family or imagining it? This is a tough question as well. It's a very good question because we all wonder, we all think we're losing our minds. Like, is this really happening? My experiences with William Sidney Mount, I second guessed it constantly until I was convinced that it was him.
Yeah, can I answer that?
Yes, please. Go ahead, you can answer that.
Yeah. Well, and I know you're going to chime in, Kerriann. First, we always get this idea that, you know, are we being possessed, or is there some malicious spirit that's just playing games with us? And the simple answer is, when moms and dads and their moms and dads and their moms and dads, as you go up in all the generations of people have passed, when they pass, good people pass the other side to become good spirits. They don't become demonic entities bent on destroying the world and manipulating you. You have a lot of wonderful spiritual presences around you all the time. You have it, and depending on your religion or not religion, this isn't a religious thing, so just take what you want from it. But you know, if you believe in God and Jesus and the angels, and you have the spirit guides, the master teachers, you have your relatives, your family who've passed, your friends who've passed, your ancestors. They're just spirit, other spirits that are just good people that want to help. So you have a lot of good people around you. So if somebody does something that seems to be a loved one who passed, and they act like them, they have the same personality, they do things that are on cue with that, how that person was when they were alive, it's probably the person. Because why would a spirit play games with you to manipulate? I mean, it's not like they're asking you to jump off a cliff. They're doing something loving to give you comfort, to help you with your grieving. And that's a good thing. So that wouldn't be coming from a bad spirit or something you would imagine. So if you feel that it's real and it's genuine, and you can feel the sense of that loved one like they were when they were alive, then there's a good chance it's probably that person or someone speaking in their behalf.
And the other thing too, if Uncle Harry was with you every single Christmas and he was very into partying and all of that, and then he passed away, and the following Christmas you take the family group shot and you see an orb over someone's head in the group shot, chances are
that's right.
That is Uncle Harry saying,
it's Uncle Harry.
Big Christmas party, So yeah. Again, you have to take it into context. But it's okay to second guess. I mean, we all have done it because this is all new to us. Are we imagining these things? Is this real? Am I feeling this? Am I hearing this? So just go with your gut and with your heart and what it's telling you, and you'll get a better sense, and just be at peace and relax and try to take in the energy of the moment.
Yeah, and remember that if you were ever on jury duty or served on a court case, remember that it's not always one piece of evidence. It's the body of all the circumstantial evidence that proves the case. So if it's not just one thing. So if you feel you smell cigarette smoke, and that's the brand of cigarette that your mom who passed smoked, and you smell her perfume, and it always happens the same time, like Kerriann said, in a holiday event. Maybe on her birthday every year, you have this phenomenon happen. That's going on. If you have all these different pieces of the puzzle, it puts together the story that it probably is that person trying to get to you.
Exactly. I have something coming in from Francesca, and she reminds us, which is very true, thank you for this, that feathers are also signs.
Yes.
I've had many people mention that, and thank you for bringing that up. That
it's a good one,
appearance of certain feathers coming out of nowhere are signs too of our loved ones. So thank you for reminding us of that.
Kerriann, do you remember when we did that walkthrough, that ghost walk through Cold Spring Harbor?
Mm-hmm.
And one single, when we were just about ready to go, one single leaf fell down, and it fell right in front of us, right in front of our feet, just a single leaf. It was like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, exactly. It's very interesting. And we have one last question, and this is a good one also. How do you find a real or a legitimate medium? What I say at all of my lectures, if you had to have heart surgery, you need an accountant, a lawyer, you are not just going to, I'm dating myself, look in the yellow pages, or just do a Google search, right? And just pick someone out. Your best bet is to really research the person, but to ask around. So for instance, you would come to me or Joe. I mean, Joe is a medium, he does readings as well. But we also, Joe and I know several mediums that are very, very reputable, that are very gifted people that have trained for years with other mediums to develop their gifts. So you want to go on a recommendation, because it's like any other field, okay? There are mediums out there, I hate to say, that are not good, that either feel that they have too much power and abuse their gifts, or some that think they are gifted and are not. So if you look back on some of our past webinars, we talk about that. That was a big discussion last week as far as evidential mediumship. When, like Joe had said last week, if someone says, oh, I have your grandfather in the room, he had gray hair and he was about my height, and he liked sports. Well, that's probably everyone's grandfather, can match that description. But if he says to you that, I have your grandfather, he was 5'8", he was balding, he went to Coney Island every Sunday with you and took you on rides, that's more evidential mediumship. So you want to go with a medium that can, for the most part, prove that it is your loved one.
And I just want to say something, and this doesn't come up too often, but if you're looking for a medium, keep in mind that you can be the best. There's a story that John Edward, the famous medium, he always, he did the show Crossing Over, and we know many people that were connected to John. Sometimes you just screw up, or you cannot read.
People can have an off day. And
you have an off day, or the spirit. Yeah. So I was let's say that if you go to someone, whoever it is, and they don't do a good job, don't hold it against them, because unless they were, they're scamming you, which you would know probably, you would get a sense of that. They're just not connecting. Maybe the spirit doesn't want to talk to that medium. They don't like their personality. Maybe they can't connect to the energy. Just find someone else, because we all share. I have people that I've sent to other mediums. I've done readings where I couldn't connect, and I sent somebody to a friend of ours, and they did a great job. And I've had people send people to me that I read and other mediums couldn't. So it's
and a
not.
Good medium often will give back some of the money too, if they trust you, if they can't read. And it doesn't happen often, but it can happen. And I know, we have a very good friend who has done readings for years, and he's told me on two separate occasions that he was reading for two sisters once that arrived, and he was very upset because he says, I don't understand. I can't read for them. There's this person that's blocking the whole thing. Well, it turns out on the way over, on the drive over, these women saw this massive car crash, and the guy died, and the guy was in the room and could not, it was all encompassing, because the guy had just died and was shocked that he was dead. And he sort of came with these women, and it literally blocked anything that our friend could do to get into, with the people that he was supposed to read for. And then, like I said, if you're in an argument with someone, or maybe if a medium is sick, and their energy level is low, that could be a factor. So there are sometimes reasons why. Well, the other thing too, sometimes you get people in there who go in who don't believe in it at all, and and their energy is so bad, and they sort of put you as if this is a performance when it's not. So people can oftentimes block a medium's true work.
Yeah, I had that happen too. If you go in, a lot of the burden is not on the medium. It's actually on the person getting your reading, the sitter or the client, because if you go in like this, I think this is a scam and you have to prove it, you've already blocked. Because think about this. Let's say you go to Starbucks, it's a Sunday afternoon, you go to get a cappuccino, and you see someone standing at the bar waiting for their drink, and you go over and say, oh, nice day, isn't it? And the person goes, grumbles at you. Well, you're going to walk away. You don't talk to that person anymore. They're a grouchy person. So if you go into a reading and you're blocking and you're not sure, you're overly skeptical, and you're like, show me you're not a scammer, and you're trying to connect to maybe like your grandfather on the side, he's going to say, your grandfather, the spirit of grandfather, is going to walk away. He's going to say, why bother even going and talking to my granddaughter? Because whatever the medium tells her I'm saying, she's not going to believe it anyway. So part of it is how you approach too. So it's a two-way communication.
Okay. All right. Before we end, I just want to make a couple of announcements. Next week is Halloween week, so we're jam-packed with virtual events. So I just want to mention them briefly. On Monday night, we're doing a special crowdcast virtual event with the book review in Huntington. And the topic that night will be on understanding the paranormal. So Joe and I will talk about, again, EVPs, orbs, ghost hunting tools, different types of ghosts, different types.
Hey, Kerriann, are we gonna play some things that night? Is that
yes, we will be playing EVPs.
Right.
The next night, we're doing a presentation for the Deer Park Library. That, like the book review one, are free events. The Deer Park Library is specific to historic haunts of Long Island, which is the latest of my ghost books. And so Joe and I will be discussing stories from that book, as well as playing EVPs from our investigations, again, talking about orbs, EVPs, that type of thing. Next Wednesday, what are we doing? We're doing strange and creepy ghost encounters. Although we haven't really had too many creepy ghost encounters, we have had some humorous ones. So we're going to share some of our more interesting investigations from Ghosts of Long Island, the first book, the Ghosts of Long Island 2, Historic Haunts of Long Island, and everything in between. So
we've had a few strange things.
Yeah. So that'll be just a fun, like if you want to learn about the fun things we've done. Next Thursday, the 29th, I'm going to be doing a presentation by myself on my book, Historic Crimes of Long Island. And that is very interesting as well. And then we're trying to get some people, some children, some middle grade children to join us on the 30th for a special children's webinar where we will be talking about the children's book and reading fun ghost stories. And what better way for a child to learn about local history than through a ghost story? And we will take the creepiness out of that and explain to children that ghosts are not as scary as they appear to be on TV and movies. So if you're interested in that, please go on to my website at kerriannflanaganbrosky.com to register. If you go onto my website, you also can click to receive my monthly newsletter, which will keep you posted on various events, when my books come out, all kinds of things. So you could sign up for that. Also, take a look at my website and look under the Historic Haunts books, because that has a direct link to Joe's website. And his website actually has all of the EVPs, well, many of them from our investigation. So you could actually sit there and follow along with the book and listen to the EVPs. We also have some interesting photographs of apparitions and things on that site. So both of our websites are joined, and you can, go back and forth between the two. As I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in getting copies of Historic Haunts of Long Island, Historic Crimes of Long Island, the metal or the new children's adaptation, I am selling them directly through my website, and I'm offering free shipping until the end of the year. And I will personalize them and sign them for you. So they make good, great gifts if you're interested in that. And I think that's about it. And I want to thank all of you for coming. Wait, we have one more question. Hold on.
Sure.
Let's see. Okay. Yes, someone's saying bloopers you did on a radio show. It's funny. Joe and I did do Blog Talk Radio for 3 years, and we had a lot of fun with it. Joe and I have one more assignment that we're doing next week for the new book, and we're planning to have a meeting after that to discuss if we should continue doing these webinars. We prefer, obviously, to do in-person events, which we will do once we are able to. But I think even when it does open up, that we can do these. So if you like what you saw tonight and our other webinars, please email us. It's very frustrating for us to just talk into a camera, not see anyone or get any reaction. So if you enjoy what you see, then we can do things. We can do a bloopers show. We did a bloopers show once.
That was a lot of fun.
Blog Talk Radio show. We had a lot of fun.
We have some great. We got some apparition photos. We've got
we have a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff. A lot of
that
good
we
stuff.
could show on screen too. So we are toying with doing this. Maybe doing one a month. I mean, we could do one on cult perspiring. We could do one even just all on Country House. So there's a number of things that we can do. So if you like what you heard tonight or in the other webinars, please do let us know. And we have someone else saying that they enjoyed it very much. So I want to thank you for spending the time. I know we went over a half an hour, so I appreciate you taking the time and joining us this evening. I hope we answered your questions, and I hope you have a better understanding of how you can communicate with loved ones on the other side.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, wait, is there one? Oh, wait, we have a couple more.
Sure.
Thank you, Fran. She's saying fascinating, enlightening. Karen, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you all for your support during these challenging times. And we hope to see you next week for some of our webinars. All right, everyone, have a great evening. Take care. Bye.